So the third video that I'm doing in this little series of different forms of government intervention is a price floor, minimum price. Very topical at the moment. This is being discussed a great deal, particularly with regards to alcohol consumption. So as before, we need to think about what the key focus of a price floor would be. So the aim of a price floor is to reduce the level of consumption. So it's important when we're thinking about price controls, maximum, minimum prices, that we remember that generally here the focus is on altering the level of consumption. That there's much less of a focus here about production. So what sorts of failure would these be designed to deal with? These would be designed to deal with failures as a result of overconsumption. And therefore, in terms of the names of the market failure that we are dealing with here, this is going to be demerit goods. As I said at the start, this is very frequently referred to in terms of alcohol consumption at the moment, which is kind of one of the classic examples of a demerit good. So let's have a look at how it would actually work. So we start off, as we always do, with our analysis of interventions with a demand and supply diagram. Okay, remembering that supply is our private cost and demand is our private benefit. Now, as we know, the market would lead to this outcome. So if the situation was left to market forces, purely supply and demand, we would end up with a price of this good of P and quantity being consumed of Q. Now, what happens when the government imposes a minimum price? Now, the first thing to bear in mind is if the government imposes a minimum price below the market equilibrium, it will have no effect whatsoever. So if the government imposed a minimum price below P, that will actually have no impact on the level of consumption because the market forces will enable it to still reach that equilibrium. So for a minimum price to have an effect, it has to be set above the equilibrium. So right over here, that this is the minimum price or the price floor. So we'll call this PM. Okay. So let's have a think then about what results this actually has on the market. Well, given that the market price is now higher than it was previously, what's that going to do in terms of incentives for firms and consumers? Well, for firms, their higher price now will encourage them to produce more of the good. The fact that they will be able to get more for it will mean that they will increase production to Q1. The important aspect here, though, and this is, as I said, the main reason we use this is to impact on consumption. So what effect will this have on the level of consumption? Well, we know that if we increase the price of something, then we will reduce the level of demand for that. And the diagram shows us that the imposition of a minimum price here will lead to a fall in the quantity being demanded of this good from Q to Q2. And we can say, therefore, that this is reducing the level of consumption. Now, given that we said earlier on that we would use this to correct the market failure where the good was being over-consumed, beg your pardon, if we manage to reduce the level of consumption from Q to Q2, that means that we will be moving the level of consumption towards the social optimum level and therefore reducing the level of market failure. So that's how we would analyse the impact of a minimum price or a price floor on the consumption of a demerit good.